Hello, welcome to Checkmate Gaming's COD podcast off the rip. I'll be your host for the evening. I'm IHOLDSHIFT, and joining me is a panel of widespread kind of different backgrounds as we've got another caster on the scene today. We also have a coach from Minnesota. We've got Pentagrxm up and coming, of course, going through the path to pro and having a great performance throughout the Subliners time. So we've got a lot of things to talk about before we get too into our topics. Of course, you could expect to see off the rip starting every Monday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. If this is your first time, it's great to have you either watching or listening. We do this live on Twitch as well as upload to Google Podcasts and iTunes Podcasts for your convenience as well. So let's just go ahead and just run down the line. Just kind of get to know everybody in case the people don't know who you are, where you're from, things like that. Panda, you're up first, my friend. Tell the little people about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Pokemon Panda, also known as Andy. Me and IHOLDSHIFT, we've been commentating games for about like 6-7 months together now. My first step into the Call of Duty scene was with the collegiate level, actually, CCL for Black Ops 4, just preparing for the upcoming season for Modern Warfare. I come from a big line of games, whether it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2 into 3, Street Fighter. I used to be a pro Halo 3 player myself, so this is all culminating into how I commentate games today.
And you've got that wonderful Movember stash going for the people. I know the ladies,
Got
I'm
that
sure,
right.
love it.
They never get back to me, so I'll let you know.
It's actually funny because, Brian, you actually are kind of rocking the stash here as well. Saintt is our coach from Minnesota, and he's looking pretty stashy as well.
I've been trying to grow it out for the month. I mean, I'm just a little skeptical on shaving like everything else, or I might in a few days. So we'll see. I have to get some headshots I'm taking first.
Oh, so this is like media time for Minnesota as well? Like you actually have to get like professional headshots done, or is it more just...
The players have stuff done like a while ago, but I have like some other things coming up with like some conferences and whatnot, and I need some headshots taken, for graphics and stuff like that. I mean, the one you guys use is like 5 years old. So.
I was about to say that was the most recent one I could find. I actually went through your Twitter a little bit to see if I could find something a little bit more recent, and no, I couldn't find anything that was released. I had the double phones one for a second, it just didn't frame it right, so... Yeah, that's looking wonderful. The rule number one, though, about rocking a stash is you got to rock it all the way through until you actually get it all the way full through. It's getting pretty darn close, that's for sure. We've also got Pentagrxm here with us, though, again, joining us from the amateur side of things. Of course, you probably recognize him from his time at World Championships playing for Carnage Gaming. And Black Ops 4 is like a big coming out party for you, Pentagrxm, and so far it looks like Modern Warfare is starting off pretty nicely, too.
Yeah. BO4 is my first year fully competing in the open bracket. Because it was, I turned 18 halfway through World War II, so it was nice being able to make a decent impact in the scene throughout BO4, and MW started off pretty well.
Starting off so good so far, and I just want to go to our first talking point, which was the most recent event. And the first big event, the New York Subliners held their 10K NY Open, and there's a lot to kind of talk about with it. If you missed the results, Team Iceman, consisting of Arcides, Brasini, BZ, Mox, and Celium, was able to take the win in game number 5, so $5,000 for them. But I kind of want to get you guys' take on the results, just generally speaking, first and foremost. We'll just kind of run this down the line. Panda, we spent some time watching it. What were your general reactions just to how the open event kind of felt as far as at least Sunday went, since that's the one official broadcast that we had?
I mean, it was an overall fantastic tournament. I mean, apart from a few glitches inside the Spectator client, but we'll leave that on the side. I know that Jay Perez is probably sitting there and is probably not really happy about it, but whatever. It's I think what was most important for me for the Pro Am series is that no pro is really safe, right? I mean, you got like real up and coming players. I mean, got one right here with us right now, Pentagrxm, able to take it to a lot of pro players. That it's not necessarily a stronghold that all these best players that are coming through Black Ops 4 will be your strong players coming into Modern Warfare. I mean, we have this through every iteration of Call of Duty. It may seem that you're always going to have players that step up, players that kind of ride that static line. Then you also have players that kind of either rise to the occasion or just kind of it's a sink or swim kind of tactics. I like how it was all laid out. I think it was a very fun tournament. The outcome wasn't exactly what I don't think what anybody was expecting leading into those last 3 matches, but yeah, it was a good tournament.
A lot of fun. Brian, did you have a chance to watch much of it when you were hanging out yesterday?
Yeah, I was watching like my players play a little bit because Silly and Assault played in it with like Methods, Trey, and Sensor. So I was just watching them a little bit to see how they were doing, individually. But I didn't watch like too much because it was kind of like a pickup tournament. There wasn't like too much to it. It was kind of just like a first glimpse at some respawn. But I'll be getting to a lot more once we start scrimming tomorrow.
And Pentagrxm, you were obviously playing with a more organized team, one that you've kind of gone out in public and said that this was going to be your team of 5 going in, looking for organizations and things like that. You know, outside of the more special moment, which was that 4v5 win versus the team in the top 8 matchup that you guys had on Sunday, what were your kind of expectations for the tournament versus how it was kind of received from you from a playing standpoint, since you're one player on the panel here?
Well, I'd say expectations. We definitely knew we would make it to Sunday, just because I mean we have been scrimming respawn, and a lot of teams haven't been, so we were probably more than likely ahead of a lot of teams in that aspect. Um, Winning that 4v5, we definitely should have closed out that series. We choked that big time, but yeah, I think for the most part we made it to where we knew we could, but we definitely could have went further into the tournament.
I feel you. I kind of want to just open the conversation up to all of you guys. You know, we're dealing with mixed, you know, CDL rosters. The rule was only 2 pro players from a single team on a roster at a time. Versus, you know, a handful of teams that did finish top 16, top 8 that we're expected to see be essentially at least a core group of 4, if not a full 5 into the pro-am scene. Did the results kind of surprise any of you guys as you were watching, or are there any kind of big takeaways as far as, you know, maybe there are some players that are out there that should be getting more of a considerable look as maybe a substitute role for some of the CDL rosters that have yet to be confirmed yet?
I mean, nothing really surprised me too much. I know a lot of like pro teams, even like as like their core 5, hadn't really scrimmed much before that. A few teams just started scrimming, you know, the other day, and ourselves, and I think a few more teams are going to start scrimming tomorrow. And even then, there's still, you know, a couple like pro teams who won't start scrimming for probably like another week or so when they kind of work on getting their players out here to like the US and stuff. So yeah, I'm not really too surprised that, you know, more solidified Pat the Pro teams kind of had good results just playing with their group of 5 that they've been scrimming and, you know, practicing with together already.
Panda, did you have any thoughts? I mean, when you were watching through, I mean, we were kind of taken aback, mostly because like we were trying to look at it from a casting perspective of like, can we start like analyzing some of the gameplay we're seeing? And there were some teams that absolutely had rotations and setups figured out, and others that looked like they're maybe a little bit more lost.
Yeah, I think Silly was telling me the other day, like when they were playing it, he had a thing on his other monitor that like showed the map rotation for
It's exactly what Shift was doing. We were sitting
We
here on
were-
a call
yeah.
just like we are right now, screen sharing with maps. We had Epic Pen going, just talking about routes, talking about different angles on what it would mean, what you could hit and hold different angles with an SMG or AR, even sniper rifle, whatever it may be. I mean, we were breaking down those matches live, man. It was a learning experience for sure. But
Oh, for
I
sure.
like how it was actually said. I mean, when you think about it, the teams that haven't been scrimming together as a full roster versus teams that have had them, I'll probably call it more of a luxury to be able to play the game more leisurely with their friends that can lead up to this tournament. Well, they're going to know these rotations. They're going to know these strongholds. They're going to know how to play effectively together as a unit versus a team that is still, well, figuring it out.
Hey, Pentagrxm, I kind of want to get your take because this is obviously you guys were coming in as a pretty set 5. How much actual like scrimmage practice did you guys get though outside of just playing in 10s before this tournament? Was this like a focal point, or is this like another step in the ladder as you guys are looking forward to the 2K that's coming up in a week?
I've actually played no 10s. We've scrimmed 2 different teams, and that's it. Robbie B's team, and then I don't remember who else we scrimmed before that. So like we didn't scrim that much, but we scrimmed enough to know what the rotations were. But I'd say for the most part, that's about all we had. Like known more S&D. Everyone was playing S&D, so that's that. And then domination's kind of just everywhere right now.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's an interesting point. I mean, because this was a tournament that was announced pretty far beforehand, but of course, I mean, we're only in week number 2 of the game. It feels like there's been so much so early when it comes to competitive events. So I kind of want to talk about just how the event was received as a whole for each of you guys. You know, we had roughly around 1,000 teams or so that initially tried to sign up. Only about 500 or so ended up becoming eligible by the first day, and it was a 3-day tournament. So that being said, you buying or selling? Do you think that that's a format that would be successful in the future when it comes down to open events that are like that for either Path to Pro or for, you know, these more regionalized teams to kind of use as a promotion kind of source, I guess is the best way of saying? Panda, what are you doing? Buying or selling that format?
I'm buying into it 100%. Because again, like it gives it gives up and comers, it gives those amateurs a setting to grind towards a place where they can actually put their skills to the test. And well, you and I, when we commentate even the CMG S&D tournaments back in Black Ops 4 too, you and I were always talking about, I was like, these are the teams, these are the players you got to be watching out for when we get down to Miami, that they're actually going to be making waves, and they did. And that's to me is why I'm buying into this, because that gives those players the setting that they need to play at the highest level, and that's what they deserve.
Ryan, what are you doing? Buying or selling that format?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I feel like free to sign up tournaments are, they're always going to do well. They're always going to get a lot of teams, and there's not really too much intermingle this season, or like going forward between pro players and path to pro players. I feel like, I mean, there'll be some like online tournaments like this, and I feel like besides that, there's not going to be too much. So I really like seeing things like this, and I think the whole Challenger series, that whole format this year is going to be really cool and nice to watch.
Pentagrxm, what about for you? Because you're the one that played through each of the 3 days. Did it feel like your time was less torched because you had set goals as far as we need to get to this point of the tournament, then we're done for the day? Or how did that kind of translate for you going over a 3-day process?
Uh, I'd say yeah. Like time torch wise, we didn't get torched at all. I feel like it helped it run a lot smoother. I mean, we got on every day and instantly played at the set time, and then rounds were usually ready right away. But like Brian said, yeah, I'm definitely buying into it, especially because this year there's no like path to pro players can play against pros. Like there's no events like that. So having these open like free to join tournaments are nice to see how you match up against the pro players.
So you guys both brought that up when it comes down to the intermingling of the pro teams or pro players in this instance playing against more open fashioned teams. This is not on our talking points list, but I'm just curious to get your guys' take when you saw the format and now it's going to be officially established that the CDL is the CDL. There is a giant brick wall between the CDL playing up against any other sort of a team, with the exception of these intermingled tournaments. So do you feel like that strategy is one that is best for the CDL, or would you have rather seen at the end of the year an opportunity for these top path to pro teams be able to play up against those champ squads? Because my personal take was, being able to see the drama of what happened in August of this last year was super exciting, but at the same point, it definitely provides some sort of a dynamic that maybe is not healthy for the CDL when your pro teams are losing to teams that maybe are just, labeled as amateurs. I know, Panda, you probably have a lot of take on this, considering that we both have a lot of experience with Overwatch contenders and what that has kind of, that division has looked like compared to what we saw during our time covering the AM scene in Call of Duty.
Yeah. Again, just to highlight a point that we were bringing up earlier too. If you're, I mean, we'll just keep using what it's actually. If you're a pro player and you're losing to amateur players, well, shouldn't that say something to the organization itself that you don't necessarily have like the strongest players? It's hard for me to gauge, especially with the game that I spend a lot of time with, like you said, Overwatch. But because of those contenders players leading into the Overwatch League, you put those two teams next to each other, unless it's like old Element Mystic before they got broken into Paris versus say like London Spitfire, like that would
Sure.
probably be a good match. That'd be a really good match, but it's a different skill gap versus Modern Warfare, where the playing field is a little bit more even, I would say. But when you put that into consideration, for those tournaments that allow these amateur teams to again put their skills to the test, they come out on top. That should be a clear cut to any team management to be taking a look at these players and take them a little bit more seriously, rather than
Sure.
just being like, oh, we just got to get past these amateur teams. Because if you're Gen G leading into champs, well, how'd that go?
Yeah.
Not the
Not the best.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on this new format coming through?
I like it. I've always liked league matches, and I feel like that's where you have the most to do as a coach, because you have a lot of like prep time. You know who you're playing, you know what you're up against, opposed to being at like an actual open tournament where it's you kind of have to get in a rhythm and you're just going, 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 going. You have like you basically get the prep for like your first match for the day, like a little bit, and then after that it's kind of just playing things like by ear and just seeing how everything goes.
And
So I like
Pentagrxm,
a more
go ahead.
established, format where you know who you're playing well in advance. I mean, I think the full schedule should be out, soon, hopefully. And just knowing who we're playing in advance, like months in advance, it's gonna be really good. It's gonna allow us to, get a lot of prep time for each match, each event that we have.
Now, Pentagrxm, I want to get your take on this because you went through kind of a roller coaster near the end of the year, with Elevate looking into you, and then that kind of fell apart. You still make it to Champs on Carnage, and now with a hot start to Modern Warfare, do you feel like there should be an opportunity for amateur players or teams to be able to compete against pro teams, or are you okay kind of with that separation that currently is being built between the Path to Pro Challenger scene and the CDL?
Truthfully, I think for COD it probably is going to be for the better. As an amateur, I do think, or I feel that at the end of the year, having an event like that is like a good thing, just to give those amateurs a chance to prove like what they're capable of. Because I mean, now we're going to be playing nothing but amateurs all year long, so it's
Right.
like, how good are people really going to see us? And I think having that event at the end of the year definitely helps. But
Fair enough. And Brian, I want to get your take too, because as a coach who's looking into developing a team, there is going to be an opportunity that hasn't really been laid out in paper or writing yet when it comes down to being able to kind of, drop players, add players when it comes to roster mania type things. But do you feel like the circuits, whether they're just individual tournaments or online, whatever it happens to be, is there enough of an opportunity to scout out new players, or would you rather potentially see kind of like an actual formalized, these are the best North American Path to Pro teams, they are in their own league where they play regularly, or do you prefer to see more of an open bracket style format?
No, I think with the whole Path to Pro format, like, seeing who's excelling and doing the best there, I think it gives you a really good sense of, who's going to translate well into the whole pro scene. If someone's dominating the whole like contender side of things, they're like a young player, they're like kind of like new to the scene and they're playing really well there, it kind of gives you like a good eye that, they're going to do well in the pro scene if they translate over.
And Panda, we're actually going to be getting kind of a weird look here. Again, we casted a bunch of Overwatch China in the last couple of years now, and Overwatch is moving away from the league system and their contenders to go to individual tournaments. So what are kind of the pros and cons that you've seen in both scenes so far? Whether it is just, big open bracket, here's 270 teams playing, whether you're good or you're bad, it's somewhere in between, versus having more of a structure that might be there. And I think Brian's going to stick in.
How contenders is going to be, I think it's basically just going to be, open bracket style tournaments for the
Well,
most
right.
Which I think is smart. Well, if anybody wanted my hot take, I'm a big fan of how Overwatch used to do it. Honestly, like leading into contenders to trials, like every team had their opportunity to up their game to be at a certain level to play at a better level. Then you make your way through open division, then you go into trials through contenders. The competition keeps getting tougher and tougher and tougher. Leading into these open bracket styles, coming back to Call of Duty now.
Sure.
Again, like Champs itself is I'm always going to reference it because when you have these open style tournaments, even leading into Modern Warfare, I want to see more of them. If you give these players the chance to even show up on LAN, like I know that I'm pretty sure the Subliners tournament that was all online, if I recall correctly. So
Yes.
When you have that opportunity to not only play against the toughest opponents in the world, but also have the experience to show how they feel under the pressure of being in a LAN environment, well, that's another thing. I mean, I can't speak for you personally, Brian, but as a person that used to coach in Overwatch too, I mean, that's something that's pretty big for me too. How you deal with the pressure on top of how you deal with the competition, all of that leading into that one beautiful circumstance that allows them to play on that platform. I think it's going to be a great experience that Call of Duty can definitely benefit from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, just being able to compete at a high level. I mean, the prize pool like in the amateur scene this year is, it's pretty
Massive.
good. It's like
$1 million bucks.
something like that. I mean, if you're like going and you're dominating that scene, I mean, I think that also doesn't even count in, all the events that like the individual teams host to like their little home circuits, and I think those are going to be like, I think those are supposed to be like $10,000, each. So there's going to be a ton of locals throughout the year. I think the prize pool for the whole Path to Pro scene is going to like greatly like surpass like 1 million total, and I think those players have a great opportunity to make a bunch of money and get themselves out there to get signed to a pro team.
Pentagrxm, we were talking just before we started up that the 5 players that you're playing with right now, you had very little experience playing with before. And as somebody who really followed the amateur scene a lot last year, there was a lot of juggling of players back and forth, event to event. Do you feel like with the prize pool being as high as it's currently, total that you could potentially earn being as high as it is, do you feel like there's going to be creating more of a we have to stick together kind of mindset no matter if things are kind of bad for a couple of weeks?
I that's all in the mindset. I don't know if the money's gonna change that. I think most of the amateurs have a pretty bad mindset about sticking things out. Yeah, I don't think I would say that the prize pool being raised to 1 million would really change how that works. Just personally from how I've seen how the amateur scene works so far.
It's an interesting conversation point because my whole feeling was like, we saw this a lot when Overwatch League went from season 1 to season 2 with expansion teams coming. This is, way down the road, but if expansion teams do come into the CDL, as I'm sure most would expect into the season 2 of it later on, a lot of the strategy for some of the Overwatch League teams was just pick up a good contenders team. And that's kind of where we kind of saw a lot of that faction. And I know personally, absolutely. I mean, why not? If there's an establishment of this team has been doing very well, why not just pick up the entire squad? And I don't know. It's an interesting conversation point. I'm probably sure we could dig into at great length, but one to consider for sure. And if you're out there kind of wondering how you can get involved in the Path to Pro, there's a lot of information out all over the place. You can find information on the Call of Duty League website as far as what the Challengers circuit will look like, as well as make sure right around the corner, the first 2K event where you can develop those Challengers points will be happening in this upcoming weekend. Let's go into the competitive rule set, though. This is, again, something a little bit. It feels early almost, actually, that we got a competitive rule set. We're a week and a half in. We already have our first rule set out, which is great. But I want to talk about different things kind of revolving around that, starting with the gunsmith feature and what your guys' individual takeaways have been so far, mostly with the weapon meta. It's been a lot of M4 conversation, a lot of MP5, but it looks like there are some people kind of wiggling around with an MP7 here or there. What are your guys' take as far as what's strongest and like what's the more universal loadout as far as how many ARs versus how many SMGs that you're kind of noticing so far? We'll start at the back end. Well, Pentagrxm, you guys were using a lot of just M4s and MP5s all the way through. Is that kind of dominating the meta conversation for you guys?
M4 is definitely the main AR right now, and it's still a mix of MP5 and MP7, but I would say the MP5 is more than likely the main sub. We're running like 3 ARs and 2 subs because most of these maps are pretty big, and personally, I think the M4 is a little strong at the moment. It can, yeah, I mean, it just melts. Like the hip fire on it is crazy, and I get gunned by an M4 up close a lot having an MP5. So I think having more ARs on the team right now is probably the meta.
Brian, any inside leaks as far as what Minnesota's been feeling the fancy of?
I mean, we start scoring tomorrow, so we'll kind of get a feel. I think we're gonna, definitely be more on the SMG side of things because, generally, like when most Call of Duty games come out, they're a little bit more AR centric off the start. But kind of once it becomes like a month or so in the game, then SMGs start to take over and it becomes a lot more SMG based. And I wouldn't be surprised if this game turns out being like that as well, because there'll probably end up being like some small nerf to the M4 in the future. I'd want to say just based off how much it's being used, and not only the competitive side but the public match side.
Fair enough. Panda, what have you been feeling on your game so far?
Well, I mean, from playing with me, like I'm obsessed with the MP5 itself. But I'm with you though, Pentagrxm, because it's like you turn a corner and then I get gunned down from the hip fire of an M4, and it's just like, well, why not just take that? It's just a big bulky SMG at this point. Might as well. It's got a little extra range, a little bit extra oomph behind it as well. But it's daunting because as well as I do. So there's no way that an SMG should lose that up close and personal battle to an M4. But hey, I'm not a dev. I'm just a caster. I just shout words into a microphone all day. But for me personally, I want to see more. I want to see more diversity. I'm a big fan of how the pros are going back and forth with MP7 and MP5. Though I'm going to agree with Pentagrxm. I think the MP5 does its job a little bit better. I'd be very interested to see in months to come before the CDL actually starts what the spread will actually be. How do you spread your ARs from your SMGs? What's the strongholds? Do you end up playing more ARs? It could also be more map dependent, just like we had in Black Ops 4. But
Sure.
I'm a big fan of the SMG gameplay so far for sure.
A little bit of a toss-up question here. Let's say tomorrow patch rolls out, M4 gets nerfed or just touched, just a touch bit, just a little bit, whether it's damage or rate of fire, whatever it happens to be. Do you guys feel like the Kilo or M13 will become the new AR, or do you just add extra SMGs into the mix? What are your initial thoughts as far as if that happened?
Add an extra SMG.
Depending on how much like the M4 got touched. But I mean, even if the M4 does get tweaked a little bit, I still think it'll probably be the best. I mean, they only really have to touch up some stuff with like the headshot multipliers and hip fire And
Yeah.
I think if they do that, it'll be pretty balanced.
Panda, you're shaking your head in agreement to a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Fair enough. Panda, have you used anything else? Because I've got a loadout for the Kilo ready to go in case the M4 gets destroyed tomorrow. Because I will tell you firsthand that my MP5 game is not strong.
Kilo, the M13. I played a lot with the M13 during the beta as well. It feels good, but again, just like what Brian was saying too, it's not like it's massive changes that we need for the M4. I think it would still be very viable for a 1 or 2 AR split, but I don't think that it'd be as strong as say like 4 ARs to like 1 SMG, like
Sure.
what I'd be feared to be running right now if I load in.
Fair enough. Beyond that, though, again, the gunsmith is so dynamic as far as what you can do to those weapons. What are you guys feeling are like the most necessary combinations of attachments that you're personally running in your public games right now? With this getting out of maybe the scrim mindset, or maybe with that in mind, what are your current favorite loadouts? Because personally, Commando foregrip compensator has been getting the job done for me on just about everything.
Yeah, I've been using the M4 a bit. I've been mostly playing like S&D wagers, pretty much strictly in this game. I've been liking the M4 a lot with been using like the Grenadier barrel, the Commando grip. I've been messing around with different stocks, and besides that, I'll kind of just like change up the red dots and try out a few different ones of that.
Pentagrxm, what's your go-to loadout? Because you're zooming around the map with that MP5 by the looks of it.
MP5. I run the FPS light because the suppressors are GA'd. The collapsible stock, stippled grip tape, and then the 10mm ammo that gives it more damage. Right now is what I have on my MP5.
Yeah, 10mm on the MP5 is pretty much staple right now. That's
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
You
I,
just need it.
I'd say if they took that away, then the MP7 would definitely be better.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Panda, what are you running on yours?
Pretty much the same to Pentagrams and their MP5, but I don't play in the pro setting, so I'm that guy that has a suppressor, and then I also have I also run overkill with a Car 98 because that's just very fun for me. Again, like with the big hit scan background, it just feels very fun to use that DMR in the game. But that's just me personally. Other than that, I mean, like the suppressed stock on top of the foregrip and the tactical foregrip on the M4 is also what I feel very comfortable with. But then I turn a corner and then I get blasted by a 725, and then I find myself only running a 725. So
Go figure that happens. I don't know how it happened, but here it is in my hands. So if you were just to go out there, because there's a lot of people that are in the public sphere that are kind of looking at the pros and cons of some of the attachments, what are some of like the things you guys look for when you're picking up attachments, whether it be for things like recoil control versus recoil stability, which is like a conversation of which does which, but beyond that, like how much movement speed are you sacrificing for stability, and like what are some of the things that you guys are feeling most comfortable with and that you would maybe suggest for people to try out, at least initially coming into this game?
I mean, I feel like the movement speed is, pretty low right now. I just hope the general movement speed of the game gets buffed when they do that supposed big overhaul at the end of the month. So I don't think getting movement speed on the guns is, too important right now since you're already slow in the first place. I think, just getting attachments that give you a lot more like recoil compensation, just getting you the kill as quick as possible are kind of the way to go right now.
I was about to say recoil control and ADS speed. That's really
Yeah.
the only thing that matters until like what was just said. I mean, like if this giant overhaul comes through and we're all a bunch of speedy Marines at this point, then it is what it is. I have no complaints. But recoil control and ADS speed. That's what I go for.
Yep. Same I go for.
Have any of you guys been playing around with M4 no stock builds?
Yes.
No, I haven't tried that yet. I've been seeing people use it a little bit, but I have yet to try it.
Katie, have you given it a go?
Tried it.
Haven't really touched it. No, I'm too obsessed with the Car 98 and the MP5, man.
Okay, we're just gonna nix you guys for this conversation because Pentagrxm and I are about to have a one-on-one here because I found a build that I think is the secret sauce, dude. I don't know what you've been running on yours, but the M4 no stock is actually low-key dirty.
Yeah. It makes you like you can be a lot more versatile with the no stock M4. I feel like that's the main thing I noticed with it.
Now, are you like me? Are you running the vert grip that gives you the extra hip fire when you run that thing?
No.
Oh, that's my juice sauce right there. Is you run the the barrel, or not the barrel, the grip that gives you extra hip fire control, and yeah, you're in there like proverbial swimwear. I'm loving it. You did mention GAs though, and I want to bring this up because this is again early GAs, and if you're unfamiliar with the esports side of things, of course we have a competitive rule set. It's actually published on the Call of Duty League website. You can find it by going to callofdutyleague.com and navigating towards it. But the pros also enter into what are called gentlemen's agreements when it comes to some things that maybe the devs have overlooked or some things that the pros feel are still a little bit too strong. Suppressors was first up. Kind of take me through the conversation point that happened, because it was probably, I would say, outside of maybe the kill streaks, probably one of the first GAs at least I had heard of, at least looking kind of surfacing through the Twitter feed of why suppressors were going to be immediately nixed off the site.
I mean, the suppressor, it just gives way too much like to the gun. It gives it, I don't know if it's more damage or something, but it gives more damage.
velocity.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's a suppressor. So like you don't show up on the mini map. You can barely hear it. I don't know. I just feel like it's way too overpowered at the moment.
I mean, in the past, suppressors made your gun, significantly worse just for
Worse, yeah. And this makes it
damage-wise, right?
better.
Yeah, now it like buffs your damage and stuff, so
Yeah.
make too much sense.
Do you think that even if let's say that there was a hot fix that came through, just, hypothetically speaking, and the damage was nerfed down, would it just become not a conversation point because not having the damage is bad, or is the not showing up the minimap just even that much still too strong?
No, I think it's more so on the damage aspect of things.
Fair enough. Mounting also GA'd, so again, that was one of the more unique things that, if you remember back to the multiplayer reveal, the devs were very excited about the fact that you can mount on just about everything. Do you guys feel it's more of a concealment thing, or just a being able to just aim purely straight thing that's why it's gone?
It's the fact that you get absolutely zero recoil when you do it. If it was just a normal, lean thing, I would have no issue with it, but the fact that it gives you absolutely no recoil is a bit absurd.
Yeah.
You already have an advantage, being like less exposed.
Yeah.
So not only that, they give you an extra buff of just, having a laser beam.
Fair enough. Kill streak wise, again, this was a big conversation point during Black Ops 4 with, if you cannot physically control the kill streak, or the score streak, then it's gone. We don't want to have it be an AI score streak. And honestly, just about everything with the exception of cruise missile, and I guess technically a chopper gunner is manned, but everything else is essentially all AI controlled. Were you guys a little bit surprised to see the streaks being as dominating as they were, or like, how does that kind of conversation, because right now it's a lot of the perk specialist streaks that people are using, where you unlock more perks the longer your streaks go on. What are your kind of thoughts as far as, how kill streaks were introduced and the specialists that are currently being given a lot of look at when it comes to the perk bonuses?
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer the specialist side of things. I think score streaks have kind of always been a bit of a bailout in Call of Duty, and I like the specialist format back in Ghost. I think the specialist will be used as long as there's a way to, like once you turn on the competitive settings, it bans all the ban perks, because I think once you get your your full specialist in this game, you get
everyone.
Yeah.
Pentagrxm, what is your take on all that?
I think it definitely plays better with the specialist perks. I agree. I feel like streaks are a bailout, especially in a game like this. Like, you can just sit back and kill whore and end up with streaks and then take over a map just like that. I think it just plays a lot more smooth with specialist perks.
I think it makes the play. It's like an even playing ground at that point too, because like when you add in like streaks and you add in like what Shift was saying, it's like it's all AI controlled anyway too, so you can still do whatever you want freely in I guess away from the panel after you call said missile. But whatever it may be, like it's it takes away a snowball effect, and that's what's really scary too, because it's like Pentagrxm was saying, you can just sit back and you can keep getting all these streaks, sure, but it's how you snowball with them too. It's just continuously creating space, continuously splitting spawns, and then that'll create a whole bunch of chaos to what we hope we never see.
Fair enough. Do you guys have a preferred specialist perk kind of progression in your loadout right now? Like, what are you guys running in your core loadout versus what your progression is? Because every time I tune into somebody new, it's like, all right, I've got scavenger second, or I've got scavenger third, I got double time in there. What is your preferred setup as far as perk progression and specialist right now?
I haven't messed around too much. I mean, generally though, like if I were to throw it on, I mean, I pretty much always have EOD as my perk one, so I probably have double time as my first one, and then uh, probably like scavenger, and then kind of another perk that like is good but not like too overpowered. That would be ban.
What are you running, Pentagram?
Right now, it's double time, scavenger, and or no, double time, tune up, and scavenger.
That's my load up right now. Tune up feels like it kind of helps maybe with the problem of not having dead silence as being a natural perk.
I always run tune up in S&D right now. I have kind of completely negated like battle harden, so I would probably throw like battle harden as like my number 2 if
Yeah.
I were to have this on.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Panda, what are you running? You playing around with perks much at all in your loadouts?
I was playing a little bit with it last night, just for fun. And it's kind of very similar to what Pentagrxm's doing. So you get that scavenger like right in the second. So when you get to that fourth kill, then you can end up just like resupplying continuously. It feels very fluid. I like how it feels, but then when you're going up against a team that's just cruise missiling the heck out of your spawns, it creates a little bit more difficulties. But in a pro setting, I could see how that specifically would be very useful.
Fair enough. Okay, getting into it now. This is where I think we're going to spend the most of our talk and where I think where our conversation is really going to take off. I want to talk about the modes that are involved, starting with the most natural one, hardpoint first and foremost. Like it or dislike it, initial hardpoint delay on P1 being as long as it is. You fine with it, or do you wish it was changed?
I like it. I think hardpoint will end up being better once the game gets tuned up a little bit, like spawn wise and stuff. I think the
Right.
spawns are wonky at the moment. Maybe when we get some more free maps in the rotation, I think some of those will kind of take spots in the map rotation. And once we have like a cleaner, more condensed rule set, I think hardpoint, will just be that game 1, game 4 staple that's always been.
Pentagram, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's like it feels pretty significant in my point of view when it comes to that initial delay.
I feel like if they're gonna have an initial delay, it should be lowered. The amount of like how long it is. I feel like there's not even like an initial break anymore. You don't get rewarded for winning a break because there's no hill right off the bat anyway. For certain maps, I feel like it works well because it's like it takes longer to get to the first hard point. But
Sure.
overall, I think the time should be lowered because there's been many times where we win the break, and then they come back and break us, and then they get the first amount of time because the hill hasn't popped yet.
Pen, what are your takes when you were watching the play the other day? I think your mics might be muted there, brother.
I felt it was fluid. It was fine. I didn't really have any general complaints. Of course, like from a spectator side and a caster analyst even too, like I don't feel the same troubles to say like a coach and a player. I'd actually sparking my interest too. I'd be really interested to see if they lower that time pentagram to see the time to rotate would probably be a little bit cleaner. But it's all speculation. I mean, and again, like it's like what was just being said too. I mean, we have a lot of time before the CDL even starts, before any event. The teams are still figuring stuff out. I'm just interested to see the adaptations that come through all these game modes.
Fair enough. Map wise, again, spawns not considered because that's a whole different conversation point with how sticky some of these spawns are. Map wise though, favorites and least favorites as far as what you've experienced so far. Me personally, I love just about everything layout wise for Gunrunner. The spawns being a little sticky right around the back warehouses, but I think that the way that the map is laid out, going from middle and then to two corners and then to two far sides, feels really, really fluid, and the map plays really, really well. Personally, my least favorite map, I'm not really liking anything about Hackney Yard right now. Not simply due to the fact that the spawns are so sticky, but the fact that you can literally M4 from the top of office all the way to the other side of the map feels just really strange. I'm kind of wondering what you guys have as far as favorites and not favorite maps so far.
Hackney Yard's a big thumbs down for me.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I have been fighting this fight, Brian, for so long. People said, no, it's scrappy, it's fast, it's fun. I was like, no, it's not.
Yeah, I think Gunrunner generally is like, probably the best map right now.
Yeah.
I haven't watched like a full scrim set. I mean, I'll definitely have a better opinion on it tomorrow, but just based over like the course of like every game mode, I think Gunrunner is, generally not bad.
Fair enough. Any others that are kind of fitting your fancy so far, though, as far as like initial play time or watch time that you've seen?
No, not so much. I mean, personally playing, I don't mind Arc Lob S&D. I think there will be like some cool dynamics on that map. I think it's a pretty pick heavy map, and there's like some cool rush and stuff you can do. But besides that, I'm saving my judgment until
Fair
things get
enough.
more.
Pentagrxm, early takes for you?
I'd say definitely say Gunner is best map, and Hackney is the worst map I've ever played.
The strongest feelings of them all.
Panda, what about you?
I mean, like this is just a personal. Hey, I'm not a big fan of Piccadilly. That map will always be a giant black score in my heart. But that's just because the camping motif that is all PC lobby right now. But it is what it is. I respect it. You got a 725 Claymore. You can sit up in that window forever, man. That's cool. I'm gonna agree though. I think we're all in agreement here. I think Gunrunner is probably the best map that's out there right now. It just feels very clean. Hackney is, and we were sitting there just like talking about all the sightlines that you get even from the top of warehouse office. You get so much just from controlling those two areas. It's terrifying to play on that map right now.
So Hackney, okay, we're putting near the bottom. Are you guys cool with Azure Cave? Again, it feels like the redheaded stepchild here because everyone hated it during the beta, and now it's being forced in almost every single game mode that we have outside of Domination. I personally, it's a little wonky. Trying to get inside the cave is like my biggest problem, but I'm okay with Azure Cave Hardpoint.
Yeah. I don't know about hardpoint on it because I haven't really seen it yet. S&D on that map, absolutely not.
No, S&D, I'm good there. Hard pass on that one.
Yeah, Hardpoint, it's really not that bad, but S&D it definitely should not be in.
Fair enough. Okay. It's a good conversation point. It just feels weird to like bring up Azure Cave. It feels like it's almost taboo at this point with how much people hated it during beta. Fair enough. Search and Destroy, though, going back into it, let's just go ahead and talk about it here because we talked about the GAs, things like no mounting, things like suppressors. What we didn't really talk about during that conversation was limiting the number of smokes you can use. So are GAs helping Search and Destroy feel a little bit more fleshed out? Again, that's the one that it feels like most teams have the most experience playing because of, individual tournaments on Checkmate Gaming and other kind of instances where they're playing, their game battles points and stuff like that on it. Is S&D feeling the cleanest it has in recent memory for COD, or are you still looking for more improvements outside of maybe, for me personally, it's bomb placement that's kind of getting me on a couple of maps?
Bomb placement is definitely really bad on a lot of the maps. I mean, obviously there's some issues with like the map design and stuff, but I think GA wise, it generally helps out S&D a bit. I think we could probably do like 3 smokes instead of 2, just because of like how big these maps are and how many choke points there are. But I think going any more than 3, it kind of creates some chaotic situations when everyone's just spamming smokes everywhere for like a lot of the hits.
Yeah.
It's not really like CS where you throw the smokes, and if you just go and run through them, you're gonna get punished. In Call of Duty, you can throw a smoke, and then you can just kind of make like some crazy playthrough without
Sure.
any consequence.
Pentagrxm, what are your feelings on Search and Destroy so far compared to other COD titles? Is this feeling like one of the best ones yet?
Yeah, I really enjoy S&D in this game. Bomb placements, yeah, would definitely be the biggest thing I see wrong with it. Other than that, I think S&D plays out pretty well. I wouldn't mind 3 smokes in S&D, but 3 smokes and respawn feels like a little too much.
Sure.
Agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Panda, you mentioned you don't like Piccadilly. I'm going to put you under the bus here because I actually really like Piccadilly Search and Destroy.
I know you do.
What are you feeling as far as Search, though, as far as what your favorite maps are?
I mean, Search again, like it's another game mode. It feels very fluid again. Like I'd be really excited to see that change of the 3 smokes, but plus the respawn too. It's just, you guys got my cogs turning in my head right now. It's but I think as a whole, just going back to the original idea of the original question of are the GAs helping for Search and Destroy? I think for that map specifically, yeah, because I mean, you have a lot of cuts that you could be hanging around. I think the suppressor GA is probably helping the most, so that way you can't hide all of your information away from the enemy team. Above anything else, I think the smoke play is also very fun to see how it helps convert rotations into committing to a fight. But overall, yeah, I mean, like at that point too, listen. I'm not a fan of playing Piccadilly. I'm gonna put this out right here. I'm not a fan of playing Piccadilly. I'll watch it though. I like watching it because it's really fun to watch those rotations come through from the smoke placements, right? Yeah.
It feels strange though too because there are 7 maps currently in the first version of the rule set for Search and Destroy, which when I first looked at the list, I was like, goodness, this is every single map, essentially. If you guys were to nix one map out of that list, Arklov Peak, Azure Cave, Gunrunner, Hackney Yard, Piccadilly, Ramaza, St. Petro, which map are you nixing first?
Cave.
Azure Cave.
for sure.
Okay, I should have stipulated. Okay, with Azure, okay, fair enough. It's even if they move the bomb, like if you were to move bomb site B, where'd you move it to? Or is it the fact that there's both bomb sites are just not in good spots?
Yeah, they're both in really bad spots. I mean, I don't really know.
I just don't think that map works for S&D. I don't
Fair
know.
enough.
I just can't think of like any spot on that map that's gonna give you like a good spot to not only take but hold bomb wise.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think the layout of the map doesn't really work for S&D, no matter like where you put the bombs.
Beyond that, though, we were mentioning how Gunrunner was one of the best hardpoint maps. I personally still have a little bit of issue with the bomb sites on that map, simply due to the fact that there's no way you can go to the train yard bomb because you get through coal and you could be looked at from 17 different angles and one person can control the entire side of the map. So is that one that you feel like could just be adjusted, or is that another one that kind of fills the same pressures that maybe Azure Cave does, is maybe layout not being great for search?
See, I think it's a bit weird because on that map, the B bomb's kind of on the side of the offender, so the defensive team definitely has to cheat more around, defending and like retaking the B bomb. So you can kind of get away with sneaking over to A some rounds and kind of just throw out like a surprise A hit, even though someone may be watching it, from like the back spawn area.
Fair enough. What about for you, Panda? Do you have a favorite map so far when it comes to layout or how it plays?
For S&D, I think I would have to say Arclov is probably the best S&D map right now. Gunrunner, the B-bomb is in a weird spot, but I don't really think it could be moved anywhere, because if it was moved into the middle of the crates, like, you can see it from pretty much anywhere in the defensive spawn, so,
Kind of tough. We haven't talked about it yet. Saint Petro is another one of those maps that it feels like 99.9% of attacks go towards apartments. Is that another one that's a layout problem? Or because, there is a time and period where it's like, just switch where the attacks and defenders spawn and move one of the bomb sites a little bit, further towards the middle of the map, and then maybe it's fixed because the initial line of sight, kind of the way it is favoring the attackers at the moment.
That honestly makes a lot of sense. I kind of hope they do that.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that, but I would definitely like that.
yeah, that's what I've been saying. If they just flip the sides and then move that fucking B-bomb, it would probably be really good for S&D.
Moved it inside like one of the buildings more on the where the current offensive side spawns. I think it can definitely work out like that, and I actually would like to play test that a little bit.
Anna, what are your thoughts as far as other maps that you've kind of had a fancy for or non-fancy for when it comes to search?
I mean, I think Petrograd plays pretty interesting too. I'm just really just soaking everything in that I'm listening to Brian and Pentagrxm saying, because I mean, if there's one thing that I can tell you from, I mean, being in esports for a decent while now, I just I can only assume that Call of Duty, again, going back to that overhaul that we were hinting at earlier, I think that would be a big step for them to take, and that's just to try these changes, just to listen to their community and see how it plays out. Because as a dev, I mean, you don't really know what it feels like to be a pro player in those settings, but if you go through those changes, it doesn't work out, you revert it back. It's just about making the game mode, the map, feel as fluid as possible, not only for a viewer perspective, but also from a pro player too. You don't want either a community. You want to, obviously both communities will never be able to meet eye to eye because everybody's seeing it at a different level, but I think
Sure.
being able to meet on a median would be really cool, and just listening to the community would be a really good place to start.
Yeah, I think overall, just the way that search plays, it still feels like Call of Duty search. I'm not sitting there joining into a Counter-Strike game, but with the ability to utilize smokes and, the other kind of longer angles with how fast the time to kill is, I actually am really enjoying search a lot. I used to hate Black Ops 4 search. If I got that league play, I'm taking the 10-minute deserter, dude. I don't want anything to do with it.
There was not like any dynamic to it. It was kind of just 5 hit something, trade out, and then late round shenanigans kind of gone at that point.
So this is interesting. With that in mind, with this search and destroying being a more strategic fashion, are you guys investing a little bit more heavily, from either a player side or coaching side when it comes to actually finding and maybe not necessarily search and destroy pros, but really kind of fleshing out the game mode more strategically based than maybe you were previously? Like, is this one of the first titles you feel like you can actually dive into, all right, you set smoke this, you set smoke that, we'll hit this immediately in this timing? Or, is that something you're kind of looking forward to doing when it comes down to it?
Definitely, that's something I'm excited to start doing. I mean, like once like the map pool gets trimmed down, like we have like our set like S&D rotation kind of going into the first set of league matches. Myself and my analyst Jake will definitely be going to a lot of private matches, kind of setting up a lot of strats and play calls. But we definitely want the players to have like a lot of input and kind of make things a bit loose. I think if you kind of just do straight up stuff all the time, it kind of gets exposed after a little bit. I think you need to have a little bit of flexibility in your game plan.
Yeah.
Are you guys spending a lot of time going over search yet, Pentagram?
No, that was easily probably our like least amount of time spent in game mode going into the 10K.
Fair enough. Is that something that you think is going to eventually, well, I guess the bigger question is, are you guys planning on going to Minnesota for the opening event that's happening in January?
Yes.
Okay, so is that going to be, you think, a lot of people, when they looked at open events last year, at least when I got the feeling when I was walking around Anaheim, people were saying that, Respawn's kind of almost like a coin toss, but if we can be masters at search, we'll be fine getting through this tournament, or are you guys looking at it having to be more balanced this year?
I think S&D is still gonna be a huge factor. I think with COD, I mean, people have always said S&D wins championships. I think that'll always be how it is. Your team has to be good at S&D in order to win series.
Feel that. I can feel that.
Especially when you have like game 5 with all the pressure on being good at S&D and being able to win those game 5s is
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
get into, yeah, when it comes to game 5.
It's like the biggest turning point in all of Call of Duty. Like you get the S&D right in the middle, you get the S&D right at the end too. If you're able to again keep your grid under pressure, then I think that would be really cool too. I also like how we keep referencing CS:GO here with how Search and Destroy kind of feels with all these smoke plays and everything too. Just to go back to Brian's point too, I like that idea of like having like a little bit of like those set plays as somebody that played a lot of Source 1.4 and even Go as well, having those set plays with the smoke grenades and having those. I guess a little bit of a playbook too. That could definitely give you an edge too. I like that macro part of the game right now.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm really excited to see how Search develops with those little tunes. Now, getting into our third game mode, and I think this will be probably the most controversial topic. We've got Domination as our third competitive mode coming out, and there was rumors that maybe headquarters would be there, maybe capture the flag. There was whispers about it, but it will be Domination. So the format currently is that it's a time-banked format when it comes to Domination. You have a set amount of time for the first half, a set amount of time for the second half. There is no score threshold you have to meet to end a first half or end the game as a whole. What are your guys' feelings as far as how that's currently playing versus we haven't had Domination for some time, but most recently in Black Ops 4, the public format of it was first to 100, halftime. First to 200, game over. What are your guys' feelings on time bank versus score threshold when it comes to Domination?
I think threshold would probably make a little bit more sense in my eyes because having snowbally game modes like that where some team can basically like essentially win the game at the first half, it doesn't create the greatest viewing experience.
Fair enough. Pentagram, your thoughts on it?
Yeah. I'd say it being time is definitely better. Overall domination, I've liked it a lot. Besides the spawns, I feel like spawns in every game mode right now for this game is the biggest issue.
I was about to say, because we had Control last year, and Panda, I'm sure you could get a vibe off of this. Control last year had its pros and cons. One of the biggest cons being the fact that if you lose 2 straight fights pretty convincingly, all of a sudden your opponent is in your spawn and you're getting trapped. So with that in mind, do you feel like Domination is a good change of pace, or would you have liked to have seen something different?
I'm on the fence of that. I like Control. I think it was fun. I think it was a good spectator experience, but again, from a player standpoint too, just being rushed inside your spawn after losing those 2 fights too. I mean, that's got to be daunting. I think again, like just to agree with Pentagram, I think spawns are probably the first thing that you look at. M4 being second, but I think as a whole, Domination itself, in this standpoint, just again looking back at the Subliners tournament, it's not spectator friendly at all. It's not exciting to watch, even because of the time rather than the point threshold. I think that it gives it a little bit more of a very exciting experience versus just listening to us trying to do math and trying to realize to be like, is it over? I think it's actually over. There's only this much time left, but they can still get this many points because it's just not very pleasing. I can only imagine too, and it's got to be daunting again for the players too. That when the match is truly lost, well, you're still gonna sit there for however long it takes until the time ticks down anyway. So at least make it all winnable by every single measure at that 100 point median.
Brian, it looked like you wanted to jump on top of that conversation for a moment there too.
No, I mean just more so on like the third game. I would like to see a few things tried out. Like I would like to have seen like CTF tried out, Dom tried out, and maybe if they had like a version of like control in this game, I'd like to see that tested a little bit more. I kind of don't like just being stuck immediately with Dom. I would like to see more things explored a little bit.
Yeah, I was really hoping for CTF in this game. I think it would have played out really well.
That brings me to my next point when it comes down to would you rather here. So we've got essentially 3 ideas. You've got time-baked Dom, you've got score threshold Dom, and the third other kind of option, which a lot of people were hoping for, was capture the flag. So picking between those 3, what are you going with? We'll start at Pentagrxm. I think you're going to pick capture the flag on this one.
Yeah.
What was your biggest reasoning behind that?
I just feel like Cap the flag is a really good competitive game mode. Truthfully, I think it's exciting. It takes a lot of teamwork. I don't know. I just think it plays a lot better than something like Domination. I feel like Domination is just meant to be in a public playlist, not a competitive scene.
Brian, what are your takes if you had to pick between those 3?
I have a similar take. I mean, CTF sometimes isn't the best viewer experience, but then you have those games that have the crazy endings, get super intense, and
Yeah.
are awesome to watch. And it's kind of just a matter of getting maps that don't allow too slow of a play style. But I don't really know how that would work in this game. I think some of the maps would definitely promote flag camping as like the ideal strategy once you got a lead, even like before that, and just like maintaining your spawn control. So I don't know how it would play out in this game, but I would like to see it tried out.
That was kind of my take was, based on the maps that we have, again, even just for Domination, we've only got 4. We've got Gunrunner, Hackney Yard, Ramaza, and Petro. And even I think a lot of people aren't very happy with Petro, considering that it eliminates the need to even go to the apartment side of the map, considering that there's no point there. But Panda, what's your kind of take? Because you've got the Halo background, so I'm sure Capture the Flag feels very familiar to you. What were your takes when you saw Domination being chosen?
You had to hit it home with that one.
I absolutely did, brother.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think capture the flag, to agree with Pentagrxm, that's exciting as hell. Going back to a previous statement that I made earlier, even about S&D, the macro play that you can present any team or any opponent is endless. It's I think it can create a very exciting experience, but striking home, yeah, my heart would definitely say like I would love to see how capture the flag would end up playing, but I think that the score limit domination would probably be the best going forward. Personally speaking, again, it's a little bit more. I would probably say that it's actually more exciting than capture the flag, because capture the flag can get a little bit snowbally, where domination always feels like that you could always come back if you just like rally up, regroup, take a good pincer hit, or just a like a good rush coming down. You can end up shifting the momentum back in your favor. But again, the way that the time's laid out, it's not pleasing to watch. It's not pleasing to enjoy either. To from a player standpoint, I can only imagine from statements that I said earlier, but I would probably say that the score limit threshold would definitely be where Call of Duty could probably soar, especially as a third game mode.
I'm not 100% sure how I feel on it right now, because I think score threshold Dom would definitely play better. But even still, it is very difficult to get a triple cap in Domination, more so than maybe in previous titles that we saw in Call of Duty, let alone that we have had in public matches of games previous. But Capture the Flag, I think, would also kind of come into similar problem areas, simply due to the fact that like footsteps are so loud. Like, could you imagine you could just hear where the guy's going immediately off of spawn? And like score limit domination, it feels like there are more choices that have to be made when it comes down to, we just have to play for 2, or what, hey, we just got a clean wipe, let's try to play for the 3rd. I feel like the conversation points that a team might have to have strategically would be a little bit more enriching to play a score limit type of domination than even a capture the flag game mode. But again, I don't have as much background in capture the flag as most of you guys do, especially the Call of Duty sense of things. And I don't know, it's kind of a weird topic of conversation, because I think, Brian, you put it up nicely, in fact we didn't really have a chance to try out anything else. We were hearing about Infected, where it wasn't just capture the flag, you had to bring or Invasion, whatever it's called, where you had to bring the flag to the other person's base. Yeah, I thought that would be kind of cool too. I don't know.
I mean, it's similar to Blitz, but I would have liked to see that, even in the game and tried out. I think it could have caused a pretty interesting game mode.
Interesting takes. So that's going to kind of wrap up everything when it comes down to what we had to talk about when it comes down to the competitive rule set. Again, at the end of the broadcast here in the next handful of minutes, we would like to take any questions that you guys might have in chat. So if you have any that are out there, feel free to just direct them at any of us, and we'll copy paste and get to them at the end of the show for a little viewer question and answer. But getting into the final kind of point, first 2K of the year will be happening this upcoming year, and why that's so important. Challenger points get assigned, also known as pro points from previous titles before that, which will help not only you individually build your own tally of challenger points, but when you combine them with your 4 other teammates for these Path to Pro events, it helps you establish what kind of seeding you have, and more importantly, we don't really have the dictation as far as how this will work, but in the Challengers rule set, it was announced that the top 10 teams from North America, top 4 teams from EU, and the top 2 teams from the APAC region will have the opportunity to qualify for free travel to a handful of these events, plus their team pass. So I want to get this from the perspective of Pentagrxm first, because you're the guy who's going through this system. How important is that first 2K, and what kind of tips or strategies do you have in mind to try to get ready for an event that is super long? It literally could take 13 hours to get through a tournament like that.
2K of the year is probably the most important online tournament for an amateur. It gets you very ahead in your points and seeding going into the first event. I'd say tips. You want to try to master 2 of the game modes. It's really nice to be really good at all 3, but I think completely like knowing for a fact that you like there's like a 90% chance you're gonna win 2 of the game modes of the 3 is probably more important than being super good at all 3,
What was you say?
especially
Like
at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I was at the beginning of the game. That learning curve is definitely one of the biggest impacts when it comes to doing well at 2K. But outside of the game itself, like, what were some of the biggest things that you felt your first time playing a 2K that was just like, holy smokes, I did not expect this?
Honestly, like the first few rounds just being like so slow and I don't know. The tournament is just super long. Since it's all usually played in one day, it can go, like you said, 12, 13 hours. And for the majority of the time, you're playing people that aren't even very good. So it's like, it's very, more like of a mental thing for the most part.
Brian, it wasn't too long ago that you yourself were in the GB grind, playing as a player. What were some of your biggest takeaways? You remember back to your first 2K and one of the wish you would have known this kind of instances?
I mean, you kind of just gotta take it as practice. I mean, now there's not as much pressure with them. I mean, before like the 2Ks at the beginning of the game, you were playing to get in the pools at the first event, and that kind of just meant so much throughout the entire course of the year, because just getting that start in pool play kind of helped push you along throughout the entirety of the year. Now you kind of just have to take it as practice. Don't be too discouraged if you don't place that well, because at the end of the day, you're still gonna have the opportunities to make up the points in future 2Ks, and more importantly, the LAN Challenger events coming up.
Hannah, what are some of the things that you're kind of looking forward to, just result-wise? This is going to be hard for us to kind of follow along with the games as they happen, but results-wise, I know that me and you specifically, we've got a couple of names that I'm sure were in the back of our mind from watching them come through the CMG Elites. What are your biggest takeaways when you look at early results in tournaments like this?
It kind of goes a lot with what Brian said too. I mean, don't take it for what it's worth. Teams will win, teams will lose, but it's what you take away from the experience as it all. I mean, like if you're still trying to figure out if you're only good at one game mode and you're still trying to master a second one, like what Pentagrxm was saying, you got to take those learning experiences at face value. Losing will always happen, but as far as results on what I'm looking forward to, I almost feel like a broken record every time you ask me this, whether we're on cast or we're doing anything. I'm always just a big fan of good games. I like good Call of Duty. I like all the game modes. I just want to see a competitive experience. I want to see this whole Path to Pro scene truly blossom as well. That I'm not looking for anybody to really pull ahead. I'm not looking for anybody to be a favorite. But what I'm looking forward to is the adaptation from now, a week into the game, all the way into when the seed DL starts to these 2K events. I want to see all of it change, and I want to see new names rise to the top, and I want to see those names that are already at the top that we might be thinking about already stay there as well.
A lot of pro players from CWO last year that are currently without a home for the CDL that I'm interested to see what kind of rosters they're going to make up when it comes down to the path to pro, if that's where they have to find themselves a home. So kind of final thoughts for you guys. Again, if you're out there in chat and you're wondering questions specifically what we've talked about, or maybe something we haven't talked about, feel free to let them go in the chat right now. We'll answer those here in just a moment. But kind of final thoughts from you guys. What are you guys most looking forward to when it comes to 2020? Brian, I know you guys have scrims tomorrow. I'm sure that's got to be very exciting, and also you got to be feeling pretty anxious about that as well.
Not really. I mean, just like this next week or so, it's still going to be, kind of just learning the general basics of the game. And I think by the end of the month, there'll be a pretty big overhaul that kind of gives us, how the game's actually going to be getting like played out by the time those first league matches come in. So right now it's kind of just learning things, meshing the team, like meshing together and kind of just, getting used to each other's play styles. It's not really too high pressure at the moment.
You guys were out on Twitter talking about potential rivalries that Minnesota's going to have, and what are you guys most looking forward to? Is there a specific match that you're kind of really waiting to see happen when it comes to 2020, or is it just any particular part of the season that you're most excited about?
I mean, I think for us in particular, Toronto is going to be a fun one because I know our franchise and theirs have gone at it a little bit on Twitter, and I think there's a little bit of beef between like some of our players and like some players on London. So I think there could be a pretty cool matchup there as well. I know there was like a whole Twitter argument like a few weeks ago, like right when the game was coming out with like Justin Assault and like scraps and stuff. So I think that could also be a good matchup.
It's gonna be fun. I can't wait to get that league started. Pentagrxm, what are you most looking forward to though? 2020, obviously, you're kind of put into a position here where you're trying to make a huge name for yourself, try to get to the spot where you might be a consideration for CDL, whether it's midway through the year or going into 2021, I guess, at that point. What are your biggest, moments that you're looking forward to for 2020?
Just the events, with how much more they're doing for the amateur scene this year with the amount of money they're putting in, and with it all being like affiliated with the CDL, like with the franchises and playing at their cities and stuff. I think it's gonna be really exciting whether you're a pro or an amateur this year, with how they're doing it.
Panda, what about for yourself, my friend? 2020 CDL. It's gonna be a hell of a journey. What are you most looking forward to though in 2020 coming up?
I just want to see more trash talk, honestly.
I think there should be some good trash talk this year.
Yeah, no, I love how the Call of Duty scene, like, they flourished in that, man. Like, I don't want to see it get, like, too crazy, but, like, tasteful. Like, almost like we're like wrestling trash talk. I want to see some good cut promos. No, I'm just kidding. Like, but at the end of the day, I think good storylines create even better games, create even a better viewing experience. So where like you bring yourself all the way back to CWL London last year too. I want to have another experience like that. I want to hear the crowd absolutely erupt when two teams are going back and forth with one another. Again, like bring me the trash talk, bring me spicy games. That's really all I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the whole trash talk aspect because, yeah, like the instances we saw from like Overwatch League, like Dallas had a cool homestand. There were a couple of cool moments that happened, but like the Overwatch League community is like super PG. Like,
I just want to like if I'm the Overwatch community. And you're just, I just want to give you a hug like all the time. Like that's how the Overwatch community feels. It's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Just like it's tasteful trash talk, right? Like it's not like, even I'm sure that some NFL players actually disdain one another too, but like that tasteful trash talk, even for MMA fighters, at the end of the day, whether they're beating each other up or not, they still touch each other's gloves. If they shake hands or not, they got a lot of respect for one another, but it's that little itty bit of spice that makes the experience that much better.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'm hoping for more of it. I don't know. Pentagrxm, you kind of had a spicy end of the year. Is there anybody that you're gunning for this year? You want to put it out in the air right now? Put it in public?
Honestly, no, not really. I don't think I really have like bad blood with anyone in the community right now.
Just want to win. That's all it is, right?
Yep.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Well, what's going to be it for us this evening on Off the Rip? Pleasure having you guys with us. If you missed part of the show, again, you can catch everything that happened, whether it be uploaded on YouTube later tonight. We'll also have it on Google Play Podcasts as well as on iTunes Podcasts. We'll do this every single week. So again, if you're a fan of everyone who's on the panel, make sure you drop by Twitter, at least give them some support. That's Pokemon Panda over there. We also got Brian Saintt with 2 T's, and then Pentagrxm, second A is an X. That's going to be like you guys' new little subtitles, just so you guys know it. It's Brian Saintt with 2 T's, and Pentagrxm, second A is an X. That's the way it goes.
For me.
Well, of course, thanks to the guests and thanks to anybody who showed up and tuned in throughout the broadcast. We'll catch you guys next week for episode number 3. Until then, hope you guys keep pulling it down. So long.